Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World Talks, where every word matters. As the US gears up for the presidential election, the rest of the world awaits its outcome, hoping to profit from the White House reshuffle. What are the most probable scenarios for Europe after the November 5th vote? Well, to discuss it, we're joined by Ivana Stradner, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me, and good evening from Washington, D.C.
Well, thank you for accepting our invitation. As you're in the very heart of the American democracy, now I'd like to ask you, which countries are doing their best to change the outcome of the upcoming presidential election in the U.S.?
As usual, we have typical actors such as Russia, but according to the Office of Director of National Intelligence, they published multiple reports, including under intelligence agencies. China and Iran are also in the game. So Russia has actually adapted its strategy. So it's not anymore about authentic and inauthentic accounts such as troll and bots spreading disinformation all over social media. Actually, they have adapted their strategy. So for example, now they are also investing in traditional media more. We already saw what happened recently with the Justice Department. Actually, they charged 2 employees of RT, a Russian state media company, in connection with the transfer of basically $10 million to a Tennessee-based media. And the U.S. actually accused those individuals of money laundering and failing actually to register as foreign agents. So we are seeing more and more influence operations through social media influencers. And not only that, there are also numerous reports actually that Russia has also used doppelganger, for example, including changing traditional, typical media username on websites and basically look like a legitimate media when it does not. So, and it's not only Russia, as I have just mentioned. China is also in the game. China is using a little bit different strategy. They are also using, just like China, also artificial intelligence. Their main goal is also to polarize the country, but also to portray China as a peaceful nation and portray Russia as portray China as a better alternative than the United States globally. But Iran as well, with its hack and leak influence operations. So the information space is actually very busy these days. But there is also good news. The good news is that on a daily basis, the United States is exposing those activities. The U.S. intelligence have published multiple reports exposing Russia, China, and Iran and their activities in the information space. But to me, the most worrying thing here is that actually Russia is considered as a predominant threat according to U.S. intelligence in this game. And according to some reports, Russia wants the former president to win versus Iran wants the current vice president to win. So,
and the Chinese?
And the Chinese, there is no official statement on that. But one thing that I have realized about them is they're also using a lot of polarizing issues here in the United States, including, for example, the question of abortion or the question of gun control to spread their influence campaigns and polarize the society further, which is actually very similar also to what Russia has been doing for a long time. The main goal is truly to undermine the trust in electoral processes. For example, one thing that I have seen in the information space, videos, for example, people tearing up ballots in Pennsylvania, and immediately after the U.S. intelligence actually claimed that this was actually false videos. So they are polarizing along religious along socioeconomic lines. So all those things that are traditionally very contentious and controversial issues in the United States, they can polarize the society even further. But I also want to...
You know, I'm wondering whether this sort of actions can actually change the outcome of the election. We know that candidates are neck and neck, right? This is a very close contest. So I'm wondering whether, you know, the release of such a fake video just 2 or 3 days before the election can change what we think will happen in the next few days.
So 2 things that I would like to emphasize. The Office of Director of National Intelligence actually openly claimed that they do not see any foreign efforts to attack integrity of voting systems, but their goal is actually to undermine, according to them, trust in the integrity of electoral processes, as well, you know, as to further exacerbate those divisions among Americans, to cite it. But you have mentioned a very important thing about the effectiveness of influence operations. One message, even though that one message might not shift the votes in the U.S. elections, the whole point is that we should perceive influence operations from a holistic perspective. For example, that the combination of such votes can actually influence elections. So that is more concerning than one particular message. And that is precisely why we have to really take influence operations seriously, because their goal is truly to influence how people think, how process decisions. And by the way, one ugly truth is that Russia is not only working around the elections in the United States, they're actually working 24/7, 365 days. So even after the elections, this is my prediction that even after the elections, even next week, there will be massive influence campaigns, definitely coming from Russia, probably China and Iran as well, where they will also challenge the results. Just take a look at what's happening in Georgia. That's exactly what they did just recently, or Moldova recently. Let alone the UK also had elections, and the European Union just recently for the past, few months, and that's something that I've been tracking carefully in all those countries. And basically, the toolkit is very similar. It's just that they adjust the messaging that can actually resonate with their audience. And make no mistake, Russia's military actually openly says that information is a weapon. And we do not perceive influence operations from the same perspective. The Russian government openly claimed that they are in an information war against the United States, while people here in Washington, D.C. still talk about some random propaganda. No, we are in an information war, whether we like it or not. And not only that, China and Iran are also learning a lot from Russia, and also Russia and China have signed multiple agreements in the field of information security, which tells you all you need to know actually how they're cooperating in this field, because they do not need to send tanks and jets in Washington, D.C. to accomplish their goals. They are doing quite well using this quite invisible yet very powerful weapon to polarize the United States and to undermine democracy here.
Right. So we have China, Iran, and Russia meddling in the U.S. presidential election. But I'm wondering which country should also be worried about the future outcome of the U.S. election. And I'm not talking specifically about Ukraine. Which other European countries could you name?
I would say definitely Ukraine should definitely pay attention to these elections, but only Ukraine. I think Europe writ large, because there are a lot of talks, especially coming from the Trump administration, potential Trump administration, and how they might approach European alliance, especially related to NATO. So Europe should also really pay close attention to the elections in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, we remember that Donald Trump had rather cold relations with the whole of the EU. Now, do you think that in case he wins, history will repeat itself?
It's very difficult actually to predict Trump's behavior because he has shifted his views multiple times, and there are a lot of actually talks even in Washington D.C. what he says today that he might actually change his opinion as soon as he comes to power if he wins the elections. But here is the thing. I actually think that there is this trend in the U.S. foreign policy in general since the Obama administration that is linked to isolationism. If Trump wins, that is going to certainly get probably to another level. He's already talking about stopping the war in Ukraine, but I'm afraid that former president actually does not read carefully Russia's statements because Russia openly claims that they are not ready and they do not want to negotiate. As a matter of fact, Putin would just buy more time to replenish his military, to reposition, and then to wait more time actually to attack. And make no mistake, this war is not going to also stay in Ukraine in such manner. But also, just look, China is watching. And while people think, that Trump might be a little bit harder on China, that's also something that I cannot predict. But those things are all linked because we have a new axis of evil. We have Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. And you cannot appease Russia while trying to be strong on China.
But nevertheless, should we expect some sort of a reset from Trump's administration if they win, or have things gone way too far for that sort of a new opening?
Trump has already announced that he would actually stop this war as soon as he comes to power. But as I mentioned, no matter what Trump wants, I don't believe that Putin wants that. And Russia was already very firm about that they do not want to negotiate. But one thing that Putin is really good at is to assess his opponents. So he might actually give Trump just a sense that he is up for negotiations, that he would just use for more time to actually reposition his military, to replenish his military, and to continue with his war. So in my view, if that's Trump's strategy, it is going to actually fail.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, now Kamala Harris has repeatedly supported Ukraine, but do you think it will stay so after her victory?
So let's call a spade a spade. Even during the Biden administration has helped Ukraine, but helped Ukraine to survive, not to win. And while we help Ukraine, delivering some weapons, we haven't delivered all the weapons Ukraine need to win this war. So what is going to happen if Harris wins? Again, we don't know, but I truly hope that she will, that her administration is going to actually deliver all the weapons that Ukraine needs to win. But not only that, here in Washington, D.C., we have to make a very clear strategy what the victory for Ukraine actually means, because without thinking strategically, we cannot think operationally and tactically. So that would be my advice for a new administration first, to make a crystal clear plan what the victory actually means.
Ivana Stradner, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, was our guest this evening. Thank you so much. It's always a huge pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. That is all for now, and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.